Welcome to the Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Creager. Todd has over 35 years of experience working with thousands of couples as a licensed therapist in his private practice. Todd shares his insights on this show. It's never too early to divorce-proof your marriage or too late to heal yourselves and have the relationship you truly want.
Hi, everybody. This is Todd Creager, and today I'm going to talk to you about attachment styles and sexual desire. I will tell you that what I'm going to be talking to probably is not found in articles or books or other things out there. This is all about what I've learned as a clinician. And I've definitely seen associations between attachment styles, as I've been talking about, and low sexual desire or lack of sexual desire in a few specific ways. So I thought this would be an interesting way of looking at it. And if you are, or someone else who is in a relationship where one person or both partners are experiencing lack of sexual desire, this may apply. First of all, one of the things I've learned about attachments is that when a person has an insecure attachment with their parent, for sure it can affect their own sexuality as an adult. Now, remember what I mean by secure attachment. If you haven't heard any of my videos before, I'll make a quick summary here, is that a secure attachment is when your parent, caregiver, whatever, tunes into you and your wants and your needs and responds based on your needs. And so you can grow up more likely into an adult that learns how to soothe yourself, but also seek merging and connecting with others as well. So you're not overly independent or overly dependent. So if you have a relationship with a partner that has some low sexual desire, it's definitely worth a look to see how maybe your attachment patterns with your parents might have played a part. For example, one of the main things I see with men specifically is when men have low sexual desire, I almost always look for developmental patterns, how attachment patterns between man when he was a boy and his mother. If he had a mother who was very enmeshed with him, very needed him to feel good, and so responded based on her needs, and she was overprotective, possibly over-relying on him. Maybe she had a distant relationship with her husband, the client's father, and in some ways, as gross as it sounds, made the son into some kind of surrogate husband, not very sexually, but more emotional, maybe heard too much of who she was with him. These kind of enmeshed relationships, I have found that, and this is logical if you listen, when the man gets committed to a partner, he can easily project that to her. She's going to be the same needy, possessive female who will gobble him up or swallow him up with her needs. Now, whether that's true or not, in other words, it doesn't mean that the marital partner or the partner in the committed relationship is really like that, but it gets projected from that child part that feels so taken over. So what I find with a lot of these men that have that dynamic, where their attachment style with their mother was not about them, but more about the mother, and that they may, at first, everything might be great, but once they get committed and there's some kind of commitment sense of it, that he may suddenly be withdrawing sexually. He may even lose sexual desire. And the reason for that is, even though there's what I call an urge to merge, there's also an urge to be your own person. And the symbolic act of sex, that union of inserting one's, let's say, penis in the partner's vagina, can unconsciously conjure up these or evoke these fears of being swallowed up. So on some unconscious level, in order to avoid that, they lose their sexual desire. I have seen that often. Now, what do I do in those situations? I oftentimes, if the client's mother is still alive, I have him set some boundaries in healthy ways with his mother. I'll give you an example of that I had many years ago, where this man who was 40 married his 26-year-old partner, who the 26-year-old had more sexual experience than the 40-year-old. A little bit of challenge there. What's that all about? They presented as he couldn't consummate the marriage. They were born again Christians, so they didn't have sex until the night they were married. And so already a lot of pressure, but he couldn't get it up. So she says he had this problem with erections. But the more I heard about it, it really was more of a problem of desire, which sometimes gets confused. Well, it wasn't like he had this desire and couldn't get it up. He just didn't have desire. And so I pursued this line of thinking that I had for decades about this attachment. And sure enough, he describes his mother as the whole family walked on eggshells around mother's needs. The husband was passive. He had 3 siblings in him, all 4, all about not making mom upset. And so and he was the oldest. So he had a special place. Like he was the one that was going to make mom proud. And they were going in the treatment, they were going to the mother's house, the parents' house. They were living a few hours away for a holiday. And both the husband and wife that I was seeing talked about what happens when they go there, that the mom already has seating arrangements, like these little cars where everyone sits. And she had her oldest son always sitting next to her, the mother, and where the wife was sitting across the table, and there's a big plant in the middle of the table. You couldn't see the wife. Now, that's so concretely symbolic to me of how the dynamic was mine, not your wife's. And so I thought, what a great way to begin unbalancing this unhealthy system. Because families are in some kind of balance, not necessarily a healthy balance. I said in your visit, in a few days from now, I want you to make sure everybody's around. But before you sit, say, excuse me here, everyone, I want to make a little change and switch your mother out with your wife. Say, I want to sit next to my wife. You have every right to do that. And both of them are like, oh man, the shit's going to hit the fan. Now, the shit is the fan. Then the shit has to hit the fan. This is something you're allowed to sit next to your wife. You could have that voice. And if you want, you can take the plan off the table so you can see your mom, but you got to sit next to your wife. Anyway, long story short, the next week he came in and he did exactly that. Made an announcement, took the plan off the table. He's sitting next to his wife, his mother. This was Friday night. They came in for the whole weekend. Did not talk to him for the whole weekend. And 2 of his 3 siblings came up to him annoyed. Why did you have to do this and rock the boat? He said, because I want to sit next to my wife. About 2 months later, by the way, the brother called him and I said, I know I got upset with you, but I was secretly envious that you stood up to mom. Does your therapist have a good therapist in our area? And they were out of the area before I did virtual therapy, of course. So anyway, my point is that it took a week or 2, but he came in, he goes, it was pretty funny. He said, I'm feeling stuff down there. It was as if he was starting to experience his own sense of self regarding his mother. But because he was able to do that, he didn't have to protect himself by not having sexual feelings towards his wife. But I gave you that story, a very concrete story. It happened when I was getting specialized training in sex therapy through the UCLA School of Medicine. I remember that particular couple, and I used that couple as a learning tool when I went through this program. So I remember it very well. That's exactly how it happened. So anyway, that's one way that attachment styles can affect low sexual desire. I found it especially with men. However, if a woman has an unhealthy attachment with their father, they too might be protected. Like maybe they were very criticized, or the father favored the brother and not her, or whatever the case may be, that when there wasn't a healthy, secure attachment there, then also she may protect herself and not trust. And so trust can lower sexual desire because the lack of sexual desire, in a way, serves to protect her from opening up, which women do physiologically as well as emotionally through the heart. And so if I don't feel sexual desire and I don't have sex, I won't get hurt. I won't be abandoned. I won't be rejected. So all those things can play a part in low sexual desire. And I know I'm talking about the son with the mother and the daughter with the father, but that doesn't mean that your same-sex parent, the attachment style you have with them might not play a part. There are definitely, I've even seen, just as I'm thinking, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but even the attachment style of one's parents can affect one's desire. And I had one woman whose mother had a father who cheated on her, and her maternal grandmother had the same problem with her husband. So they gave her the message that men are not trustworthy and that sex is bad, because for them it was painful, the husband, the way sex was dealt with. And so she was very closed up sexually. So I helped her learn to, again, heal from those traumas and learn to have her own sense of self, and that sex isn't necessarily bad or good. It's what we make of it, and that men can be trustworthy or not trustworthy, and don't generalize that. And let's make sure your husband does everything to generate your trust, to evoke your trust. That was what we did, and it was really helpful. So the attachment styles of our past will affect the way we are with our partner in our intimacy and including our sexuality. So I just wanted to bring that out, and that there's help for that. There's help for that. And even if a parent has passed away, in this case, with the man and making the announcement at the table, his mother was alive. But I've done this work many times with men and women who had parents who had since been deceased, but that we're able to still do a lot of this work, this family of origin work, working through those attachment styles, and hopefully, like I said, getting to the point where you could develop a healthy, secure attachment with your partner in and out of bedroom. So that's what I wanted to bring up today. Thank you so much for listening. This is Todd Creager, making the world safe. So love.
That's it for today's episode of Let's Talk About Love, Sex, and Infidelity podcast with your host, Todd Creager. For free resources and materials, head over to toddcreager.com. Loved this episode? Head over to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.